Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Josh, Talent Acquisition Specialist for XR Games, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. And you guys are lucky few to see me deliver my first ever talk, so go easy on the feedback. And if I break down into some sort of nervous wreck in the middle of the floor, just ignore me, okay? So I'll get straight into it. What are we going to talk about today? So first of all, there's going to be a bit about me and my experience and what's brought me to here today. Then there's going to be the importance of employee branding. You're recruitment professionals, you'll probably know all that stuff anyway, so you'll probably be falling asleep during that bit. But then there's going to be some quick wins to improve your employee brand. So there's going to be some stuff from my experience that I've found that like very low effort but high reward yields, because as we all know, employee brands are a massive beast. So it's not going to be fixed overnight, but hopefully you're going to find something useful. And then there's going to be a bit at the end for any questions if it's interesting enough to ask questions about. So, first of all, a bit about me. Like, most of you in this room, I'm guessing, like, I fell into recruitment. I don't think anyone here grew up saying, oh, I want to be a recruiter. So I fell into recruitment in 2019. I joined a small recruitment agency in Manchester called Chroma Recruitment. Got to work for a variety of businesses, everything through from startups right through to some pretty recognisable brands. But the thing about agency recruitment for me anyway was that it was very transactional. I got a passion for growing exciting businesses and growing out their teams to scale, and I just wasn't getting that in the agency I was in anyway. So moved on from there to a brand called Cinch Cars. You might have heard of them, Rylan on the TV, all that sort of good stuff. And got quite a big brand, and then going through quite a significant scale-up phase. So I joined to recruit into their tech and product teams. And what I enjoyed most about there is that I got a chance to work on some wider recruitment activities. So I got a chance to do some deliver training to the talent acquisition team. I got to work on some like diversity projects and like junior programs and all sorts of good stuff. But I sadly, while I enjoyed my time there, I decided to move on this year and join an industry that I'm extremely passionate about. So I fell into the video game industry. So I joined a company called XR Games, which is based right here in Leeds. They specialise in VR video games, and it's very, very exciting, I'm sure. You know, growing up, I was one of those that always thought I'd be making video games, but I'll settle for recruiting the people that make video games. It's almost as cool, not quite as cool, but yeah. They're going through a bit of a significant scale-up phase as well, but again, this sort of similar problem that I've encountered quite a lot is that no one really knows who they are. Like, that's all about employer brands. So, why am I telling you all this? Probably bored, stiff, like Josh, why are you telling me your life story, no one cares. Well, the thing is, like my experience working with a variety of businesses, they all kind of had sort of some recurring themes, and that's the importance of like employer brand. So no matter what kind of business you work for, everyone has an employer brand, whether or not you sort of know it or not. You know, but my experience led me to working on, you know, work with startups who had their offices literally in shipping containers in the middle of Manchester, right through to some more global, well-known brands, and then everything else in between. But again, the importance and recurrence of all that is that they have an employer brand. They all need to focus on that, no matter how big your company is or what you do, what industry you're in. Employer brand is extremely important, especially in the war for talent, as I'm sure you all know. So, I've already talked about that, sorry. So, again, the importance of employer brands. Recent LinkedIn study showed that, like, why is it important? Well, it can lead to 28% reduction in turnover, 50% cost hire reduction. You've got 50% more qualified candidates applying to jobs, which is always good, and then up to 2 times faster hire time. But most importantly, I think the thing about employer brand is that it helps you as a business stand out. So, why you're all here? How to quickly improve your employer brand? Again, you probably know all that stuff, right? So, again, just to reiterate, the stuff I'm going to share with you today is going to be quite low effort stuff that you can get started with tomorrow if you really wanted to. Stuff that's really low effort, but in my experience, starts to yield some quite high rewards very, very quickly. Again, no matter what kind of business you work for. So, tip 1, blogs. So, blogs are in my opinion, a great way to give your employees a voice. So, the good thing about blogs is they can be internal or external. So, my experience when I worked at Cinch, for example, we had an internal blog platform called Blogging, which is great if you work in a big business because it allows people in their teams to find out what people in other departments or teams get up to. Gives those employees a chance to talk about what they do day to day, which is, it's just, I think, a great way to, like I said, if you're in a big business, you can often feel like you're a small cog in a big machine, whereas blogging gives them voice to say, right, this is what I do. And if you speak to a lot of people in your organisation, they'll probably like talking about themselves, and they like it when people take an interest. But again, external blogs are great as well. They showcase life in the role. I know a lot of stuff. I mean, my experience in working now in the video game industry, everything is under tight lock and key. I can't even talk to candidates about some of the stuff we're working on because it's all super top secret. But saying to our employees, hey, why don't you write a blog about what life is like as an artist or a programmer at XR Games? It gives some people insight, gives potential candidates transparency on what the role entails, which is really, really important. And it can be short or long form. So I think if you say to your employees, hey, why don't you write a blog for me? They're thinking, oh, why? I don't want to write a 10,000 word essay on what my job is. My job's busy enough as it is. But it doesn't have to be that. It can be as short as just tell me about what you get up to day to day, or it can be talk me through your entire career in a small business. All of it is just, and also as well, if you want a tip to help encourage people to write blogs, because some people might be a bit put off and I don't really want to talk about my job, I'm not really confident enough. You can always do one yourself. I found that I wrote a couple of blogs, and when I've shared that around with the teams, they've been like, oh, that's good because they can follow a structure or a certain format, and it helps them feel a little bit more comfortable in talking about their own life and their own personal experience. But the good thing about that is, again, potential candidates read this stuff. So again, when they're looking at saying, oh, do I want to be a programmer at XR Games, for example, they can look at a blog, read about what the day is, and then hopefully get excited by that and then apply. Tip number 2, employee interviews. So I'm talking mainly about sort of video interviews, but these are very, very similar to employee blogs. Giving employees a voice, get them on camera and talk about whether it's day in the life of an artist at XR Games, or a software developer, or a product owner, or whatever it might be. But the thing that has it over written blogs is that it creates a lot more reusable content. So when you've got blogs, you can put them on your career sites and stuff, but yeah, if you've written quite a few pages, they can be a bit lengthy to read, whereas video content can be more engaging than written content. So there's been plenty of studies done by social media platforms about how video content is a lot more engaging than written content. So doing stuff like that, help putting it out there. You can put it on things like your career sites, you can attach it to your LinkedIn posts when you're sharing your jobs, saying, look, don't hear it from me, I'm a biased source of information because I'm a recruiter, I'm paid to tell you about how amazing it is to work in this business, right? But don't hear it from me, hear it from someone within the business, within the team, someone you might potentially be working with. I know obviously you can't share everything like when you're in business, but the more you can share, the more it gives potential candidates transparency on what life is like. Also, it showcases your culture and diversity. So if you're showing some B-roll footage of people in the office, or if you're trying to showcase, if you're as a business trying to focus on diversity, but all your content is a bunch of white middle-aged men in the tech teams, for example, it's not really gonna sort of do you any favors, is it really? So it showcases what kind of culture is all about, and like I said, it just gives you that transparency for your potential candidates. Tip number 3, candidate stories. Now, I call them stories just for lack of a better term, but this is kind of more short form content. So I'm talking more about asking people that you work with within your different teams and saying hey, how did you find the recruitment process? And do you mind recording a few of those words, whether it's written down or even videoed? Just saying, can you talk? Like I said, it gives transparency to potential candidates. That way, it's more personal. So people who are talking on camera, they're giving their real life experiences, especially if you work for a big business where you actually get quite a few applications from potential candidates. It helps them not feel like they're just a number. When you go on LinkedIn, you see 200 applications to that job. Am I just going to be another CV on a big panel and a big pile of CVs? No, because I've seen that video where that potential candidate talked me through exactly what, they gave me their story and what the recruitment process was like. I know it's quite personal. That's going to help me apply because I know exactly what to expect. But I think the most important thing with that is that it benchmarks a great experience. So if you're putting out content constantly saying, this is a great experience that our candidate had that we hired, you as recruiters, but also your hiring managers, are holding yourselves accountable for giving that great experience every single time. Regardless of whether or not they got the job, it's important that, as we all know, as I'm sure Taryn will talk about, giving people great candidate experience. But you just, like I said, you're holding yourselves accountable there. I'm not saying that obviously you don't know that already, but if it's out there in the public eye, you've got to make sure you maintain those really high standards. Tip 4, shout out activity. So this might seem like quite an obvious one, but I'm a big advocate for collaborative hiring. Recruitment should be, in my opinion, a partnership in different departments, not a service. So shouting about activity, you probably all work in businesses where the marketing departments are doing a lot of the legwork already, a lot of hard work. They're shouting about whether it's the consumer brand or just brand business in general. So it's quite low effort. You can sort of piggyback off a lot of that stuff, work with those teams and say, hey, I want to really push my employer brand. I want to shout about us as a great place to work. Can I utilize things like social media platforms or particular followings and things like that? We need to talk about the stuff that we're doing. So whether it's us going to recruitment events and being present at that, or whether it's teams doing like our hiring managers, delivering talks at things like universities and stuff, we should all be shouting about that. Partnering with a company that is hopefully helping you improve diversity within your teams, shout about it. All this stuff, whether you know it or not, kind of works subconsciously in potential candidates' minds, of saying, okay, I know that I really want to work in a diverse, culturally awesome team. I know that business does that because I've seen lots of their stuff on their LinkedIn or their careers pages. I know they're constantly at different events and they're partnering with great brands and great businesses that are helping them deliver that. I know that they actually, when they say they want to improve diversity, they mean it because I've seen it. So we should all be making it visible on things like career sites and exactly where candidates should go. Don't just think of your career site as a list of all the jobs that you've got open. Push all this content out constantly, and you'll find all of a sudden that when you're speaking to candidates, they'll say, hey, I actually saw that video that so-and-so did, or whether it's this blog, or I saw you at that event. Like, candidates remember that stuff, and it helps set you apart. Tip number 5, showcase your EVP. So I'm making a big assumption here as recruiters, you all know what employee value proposition is, or you've at least heard the term or something like that. It's a very big piece of work, as we all know. Obviously, it can warrant its own presentation, its own discussions, but I think the thing about your EVP is that it shouldn't just be this huge piece of work that you spend months and months on and then kind of just sits in the background. You announce it to your HR, sends an email out saying, right, we've done this, we've identified our cultural fit and our values, and then it just gets sent into the deleted folder and nobody cares anymore. That stuff should be out there, out in the wild. It gives candidates potential transparency. If I'm a potential candidate and I'm looking at a place to work and my values are, say, for example, I've got a big emphasis on personal development, or I want to work somewhere where I get autonomy or lots of training and that sort of stuff. If I see that in your EVP you've got those cultures and values listed as those things, I'm much more likely to apply because I'm saying that's exactly where I want to work. The thing about recruitment, as we all know, is that I think candidates are a lot more informed these days. There's a lot more transparency out there. And I think also it's a very small world. People talk, right? Especially in tech. If you're a software developer, as I'm sure you all know, put your CV on job board and within 10 minutes you're hounded by people like us saying, oh, my job's great, my job's great. But if I've got like 10 job opportunities and I'm looking through their websites and I see somewhere that's got great culture and great values, they put it in writing that that's what they want to do and that's what they want to deliver every time, that's somewhere that I'm going to want to work. So you're going to find, hopefully, at least more compatible candidates. So you know that when you've got a CV that's landed on your job board, before you even pick up the phone, you're like, I know this person's more likely to be a good cultural fit. It's almost like doing a cultural interview before you've even got them in the process, because you're hoping that they've read all that stuff on your website and that it resonates with them, and that's why they applied. And finally, tip number 6. So give a first-class sit onboarding. Now, this sounds like really obvious stuff, I know, but it's something that I think gets forgotten about quite a lot, not just by recruiters, but also like hiring managers as well. So first one is merch. Again, sounds really basic and cheesy, right? But I'm guessing all of you, when you're scrolling your LinkedIn, like you've seen lots and lots of posts about all the swag boxes and the water bottles and the notebooks and stickers and saying, hey, I got a job here. The thing about those posts is that they're almost doing, again, they create a really good atmosphere, as cheesy as that sounds. They tend to get a lot of engagement, lots of people commenting, saying good luck, congrats on the new job opportunity. All those people that are seeing those posts are seeing your brand on that box, on that water bottle, on that notebook. And it helps stick in their minds. I know that I could list off a few brands that I know what's in their spring box because I've seen it so many times coming up on my LinkedIn feed. Again, that stuff's all subconscious. It all kind of happens in the background, does great, so it kind of builds an employee brand. And I'm thinking if I'm ever looking for a new job opportunity, that's one of the first brands I think of. Plan candidates onboarding thoroughly. Again, this sounds really obvious, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you It's okay. I know, I'm sure I don't need to tell you, but I think this goes mainly for like hiring managers, because candidates these days, I mean, they have 3-month notice periods minimum, sometimes even more. That stuff needs to be planned way in advance. I'm not talking about just your first day, I'm talking about first week, first month. If you really want to go hell for leather, do their entire probationary period. This stuff, I think it's such a small part of your day that goes a long way, because it helps calm those new job nerves, like, I don't really know how my first day is going to go, or what I'm going to be getting up to in the first week. That stuff should be planned out, and then that way, candidates know exactly what they're getting in for. This way, that when they start, they can, when they talk to their friends, how's the new job going? Oh, it's going amazing. I've met my manager today, I met the team, and I know exactly what's ahead of me for the next week. Communication is key. Again, people have long notice periods, and we should be checking in constantly, not just us, but again, hiring managers, I think, should be checking in a lot more constantly than what probably a lot of our hiring managers are doing already. Again, through notice periods, if they don't talk to their manager for the entire 3 months, it's like, do they even care about joining their team? Or what's my team like? Is your team doing any social events? Invite me along as a potential new candidate. All this stuff goes a long way to creating an employee advocate from day one. So when I talk about employee advocacy, that's someone that's going to stand up in front of a group of people like this and say, my place of work is a great place to work because, my boarding was planned really thoroughly, I got all this cool new swag, and it's a great atmosphere. And yes, that might not last, that's the honeymoon period of starting a new job, right? But it's really, really important. And I think that just goes a long way to help, like I said, set yourself up as a good employer brand, really, in my opinion. So, to wrap up, you all know my work-life story, so you're welcome for that. It's really important information, I'm sure you'll remember. We've talked about the importance of employer brand again. I know you all know that stuff, but it's just good to constantly reiterate because it's so important these days and all the time, as I'm sure we all know. And hopefully, I've shared some useful tricks that you might like, that, like I said, low effort, high reward. You can get started with all of those pretty much tomorrow if you wanted to. They don't cost any money, it's just all stuff that not just you guys as recruiters need to know, but again, this is stuff you can take to hiring managers and say, this is what's going to set us apart, especially in tech. Like I said, it's super competitive out there, so this is how we do it. So, any questions at all? No?
I have a question.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, come on, you go. I was going to ask you, when you changed your recent role, what was it about this new role that kind of captivated you? Why did you want to join this business?
I think I'm biased. Like I said, I grew up a gamer. I've been a gamer since I was about 6 years old. I was really happy at Cinch. I got to work on some great stuff, and I still love it as a brand, Grace, I promise. But when I got that, it's a notoriously difficult, what's what I'm looking for, industry to get into. So what excited me about that is they're going through a bit of a significant scale-up phase. A lot of the stuff I did with Cinch, because the thing about Cinch was that they had a great consumer brand. Everyone's seen the adverts on TV. Everyone knew who Biden was, but no one knew what it was like to work at as an employer. So we had a lot of work to do when it came to employer brand. XR Games is kind of in the same boat. A lot of people might have driven past it. They live in Leeds, but other than that, they don't really know what we do. Even in the gaming industry, we've made a couple of games, but our best stuff is yet to come. That's what excites me as about Recruiter. I can then, help them build that from the ground up and hopefully learn a lot along the way from my own personal development. So that's what drew me to it, and it's going well so far. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be doing a lot around kind of internships, apprenticeships, and graduate opportunities. So again, when I mentioned that the video game industry is really tough to get into, one of the things that I said during my interview process with them was, am I going to get a chance to do all this stuff like events and talks and whatever it might be, and all this stuff with our apprenticeships and stuff. We're going to be going to universities and doing talks. That's pretty insane, but pretty awesome. So again, it doesn't matter really that they don't have an employer brand yet. I'm going to help them build that from the ground up. And that's not just me, it's a whole team effort. But again, I love the whole collaborative hiring thing, so that's what excited me about that. Yes?
How many of you are in your talent team?
XR Games.
Yeah.
So it's just me and my boss. So before me, it was just my boss Andy, who was doing a lot of the talent acquisition, HR stuff all by himself. We've gone from a team, we started off this year at about 45 people, and now at 90, so kind of doubled in less than a year, which is pretty exciting. But he's just one man, he can't do it all by himself. So a lot of my work is very sourcing focused, but again, I was like, I want to get involved in all this stuff that you're going to be doing around. We're building out things like our benefits packages and progression frameworks with all our teams and diversity and all this stuff that I'm really passionate about. I'm going to be able to get involved with. So working with a small team is tough, but who knows what the plans are for the future. We're looking to be about, like I said, we're at 90 now. We'll probably be about 140, 150 people by next year. So we might need another person potentially, but we'll see how we get on. Depends on what I do, I guess. I'm filling all these jobs.
These tips that you've gone over today are really helpful. Have you gone about actioning them in your current company?
Yes.
I'm just interested, like, how do you get the buy-in from hiring managers to be able to do certain things that you talked about?
It's tough. It's not an overnight thing. Like this whole recruitment as a partnership thing, that's a long process. I was at Cinch like 18 months, and by the end of it, I felt that I was a real partner with the departments I recruited into. They came to me for advice on stuff, but that wasn't an overnight thing. Like when I started, it was just, I relied on agencies so much, and I was just the admin guy. But doing all this work, I'm saying, look, we want to attract people, let's do this, let's do that, and talk to them about, look, you want to hire the best people into your teams, this is how we do it, and you get buy-in. And again, it's not an overnight thing, it takes some time. And XR Games, we're kind of in the early stages of that, so I actually recorded a video myself, which was a horrific experience. The other day, talking about XR Futures, which is again like our graduate program. We've got a bunch of people writing blogs and stuff, so I'm doing like a careers newsletter that I'm going to be sending out to all our people on our ATS. So that's talking about all the activity that XR Games does, not just, here's the games that we released recently, because again, we probably won't be releasing stuff for a while yet, because it's all top secret. But talking, hey, here's a blog from one of our artists, they talked about life as an artist at XR Games. All that stuff does my job for me, which I'm a big advocate for. It makes my life easier. Anything that can do that is something that I'm happy with. But again, don't get down if you're not seeing that success. If you've still got hiring managers that are still like, I don't care about employer branding, I don't have the time to write a blog and stuff. It takes time. But if you're, like I said, when I started speaking to candidates at Cinch, who I'd sent videos that some of the team have done, and they've said, that's really interesting. Some of the stuff was by the tech team. I didn't understand a bloody word of it. But when you send it to a software developer, they're like, that tech sounds cool. I want to chat to them and interview them. That's no.
But that was hard getting some of the tech guys to actually do a video about what to do.
Again, it's tough. It can be tough. But again, I was getting candidates from that. When I was sharing it on my LinkedIn, saying, "Hey, check out this video that people have done," I had people message me off the back of it saying, "Can we have a chat?" And it was dead informal, but the second you get a candidate from it, you'll watch those hiring managers' ears perk up and say, "Oh, this actually might be worth my time doing." Long effort, but I promise you it's worth it if you can get there. But it's not something that's going to be done overnight. Employer brand is like a mountain to climb, right, as we all know. This stuff is stuff you can get started with straight away, but where you'll be in another year, you'll be able to kick your feet up on your desk and let the candidates pour in because they've seen all the work you've done. Exactly. Yes,
sorry. It's just a question around whether you think the role of a recruiter has evolved over the last few years. I know obviously I'm in agency recruitment, which obviously is different, but I went to university to do marketing.
Yeah.
And I did recruitment for the first few years. It was sales. There was nothing else involved. It was it wasn't marketing or anything like that. Yeah. But I find now that when we work with our clients, it's like a marketing campaign rather than sales.
Yeah, I definitely think the role of a recruiter has changed. It's gotten more competitive. I mean, don't get me wrong, recruitment was always competitive, especially in tech and things like that. But again, I think these days candidates are just almost too informed. They've got their pick of where to work. I mean, even we as recruiters almost do in a sense. Because it's not so much things like job hopping isn't a thing anymore. It's about, right, what business is working on, whether it be cool tech or, again, have a cool employer brand. Does it look like a fun, collaborative, culturally great place to work? Our role is to help facilitate that. Like I said, I don't think recruitment should be a service anymore. The whole mentality of, these are my stakeholders and I'm a service to them and their beck and call. Yeah. I don't really agree with that. It's something I learned a lot from Chris Piercy, my boss at Cinch. Yeah. He told me just partner with them and actually, it's a two-way street. Yeah. If they want the best people in their teams, they're going to have to meet you halfway. I can't just sit and source all day and find the best candidates for you. Doing this stuff, like whether they do videos or blogs and stuff about life in their role at this business, it might seem like I'm being lazy in it because it does my job for me, but at the same time, again, we're biased sources of information. Everyone expects the recruiter to say it's a great place to work, but when people are getting on video, like, or writing down in black and white saying, this is why I like working here, you can't really hide behind that, and that's much more powerful than anything we can do as recruiters. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
News. Awesome. Well, there's some very high-tech QR codes if you want to get me on LinkedIn, or if you want to provide some feedback. Again, this is my first ever talk, so I might have been a bit rusty, so apologies. But if you do want to leave me some, hopefully not too harsh feedback, you can do through the Google form, or I'll obviously be around so you can talk to me after. But yeah, thanks guys. And thanks
today I'm going to talk to you about the candidate journey. For those of you that don't know me, most of you do. My name's Taryn, and I'm head of talent acquisition for the IDHL group. I'll kind of go through that in a little bit more detail in a sec. So, introduction. A little bit about me. Yes, it's lost on my formatting. Never mind. I'm really passionate about people, so I think that really feeds into what I'm going to talk to you about today, because I feel like the candidate experience and working in talent, I think those things really go hand in hand. If you're not passionate about people, you're kind of in the wrong job. So I'm super passionate about people, which leads me on to I'm very, very nosy, and I'm definitely intrigued by people. So I think that should underpin anybody that works in talent. If you're not nosy, I mean, I can see everyone smiling, so I'm guessing you're all kind of in the same boat, but I think you need to be intrigued about people. I think you need to be nosy. I think you need to be inquisitive. That kind of goes without saying. I started my talent career externally before moving internally. So I'm interested how many people started externally here. Kind of half the room. So we've got a couple of people that were always internal. I've now worked at IDHL for 14 years, which is a really long time, but it's been a really good 14 years, and the progression of the business has meant that it's kept it really fresh and interesting, and it definitely doesn't feel like 14 years that I've been there. We've acquired a lot of agencies along the way, which has given us all some kind of fresh challenges. And I'll go into a bit more about that actually in a second. I think it's on a later slide. I'm dyslexic. Now, I put this on here because I actually think being dyslexic makes me a much better recruiter. And I think it makes you think about things in a different way to maybe, you go through the school system and people tell you, you need to get an education, you need to do X, Y, and Z, and that's how you get a good job. And I always felt a bit of a fraud, but by being intrigued by people, I ended up working in recruitment, which I think in some ways being dyslexic has been a little bit of a superpower, and I definitely think it makes me better at my job. Hospitality. So hospitality gave me the skills and building blocks, I think, to be successful in talent. And when we are looking to hire people into our team, we don't always look for people that have worked in recruitment, but we really like people that have worked in hospitality. So somebody who is customer service focused. So back to that kind of customer, not always being right, but just having that customer focus. Really competitive, to a fault sometimes. And I would say that the team that I work with are also quite competitive. I mean, some of them are here and they're definitely all smiling at me right now. So I think working in this environment, which can be challenging and it can be very fast-paced, I think being competitive can help you a little bit. And I really think that we should sweat the small stuff. So there's a lot of people say, don't sweat the small stuff, don't sweat the small stuff, but I think you should. So I flip it on its head, and I think that when it comes to talent and working with candidates, it should all be about the detail, and it should be, you really being inquisitive and finding out about the people that you're putting through your process. So for me, that's probably, if there's one takeaway from my presentation, it is think about all the small stuff. I'll tell you a little bit about IDHL for those of you that don't know who they are, and I'm sure some of you will know who they are, but IDHL are a group of agencies. We've got 9 agencies in fact. When I joined, there was just WMG and there was 20 of us. And now there is, it says 400 employees, but it's about 425. So going from 20-ish people to 425 people, yeah, it's been an interesting journey to say the least. We've got 9 leading brands, so all these agencies that are part of this group are specialists in what they do and they're seen as leaders in what they do. 5 key locations, so we're based in Harrogate, Leeds, London, Manchester, and Whitley Bay. We specialise in digital transformation, organic and acquisitive growth, which means we acquire businesses. We've got a highly processed platform, so we are very good at process. The revenue there, 26.5 million, was in 2021, so it's bigger than that this year. But like I said, I started when there was 25 people, and I'm sure that we were definitely hundreds of thousands in that first year, so it's grown an awful lot in that time. Oh, this is really kind of gone skewer, but those are just the brands. So if any of you know any of these, we've got Equation, Engineering to Digital and WMG that specialise in digital marketing, and then we've got Wired Plus, which are an email marketing platform. Then we've got Foster, NetConstruct, Pinpoint, Statement and Ampersand. They're all web development businesses, so they all build websites basically, in a nutshell. And these are some of our clients. So you'll see we've got some names that you probably recognise from some couple of local businesses like Leeds United, Hotel Chocolat, Neon's a big client of ours, Ryobi, Berry, Bronze, lots of people that you recognise. And loads of clients that you wouldn't recognise but have got really nice big budgets. So just a bit more on this background, because I think it's all relative, right? So whatever you're doing with recruitment, it's relative to the business that you're working in. And as I've just explained, I've been at IDHL for a really long time, so it's all relative. My talk is relative to what we do, but I think it is really transferable. And actually, based on the people in the room, I think it's kind of, it would work for everybody. I think if you're working in a talent role, which is very much about hiring large numbers of people, I think you'd need to adapt the approach a little bit to make it work for you. We hire into 2 main groups, so technical and commercial, and it's a really diverse list of job roles that we cover. We work in a very talent short market, so again, I'm guessing from the people in the room, we're all in that kind of same boat. We don't have a physical product, and I think that that's a really big thing for us, in that our candidates that become our people are our product. So if we don't get this bit right, we don't have a very good product, because our product are our people. Typically agencies are fast-paced, difficult to work in environments. They are very rewarding, but they are difficult because our candidates are expected to work across multiple clients and spin many plates, and it's not for everybody. So some people either thrive in agency or they really don't like it at all. So you're working in a talent shop market, and then they've got a choice, so they can work in-house or they can work agency. And agency is definitely the harder choice. My team is run like an external agency internally. I mentioned at the beginning, I've got a team of 7, which is a big talent team for 400 people. But we see it as business critical. If we don't have the right people in our business, we don't have the people in my team that are going out finding the very best people in the market, it's not going to work for us as a business. So we do work like an external agency internally. So we have resources, we have administrators within the team, and we've got a number of talent acquisition managers, if you like, that are working on the roles. We're very commercially focused, so I think IDHL are known as a very large group of digital agencies, and they're also known for being very commercial, which is different to a number of other digital marketing agencies. I would almost describe us as a business that is a commercial business that sells agency products rather than the other way around. So all the decisions that we make are based on is this actually going to add value to this business, which makes it a slightly different beast to more independent agencies. We hire on average between 12 and 20 people a month. We've hired 170 in the last 12 months. We have an acceptance rate of around 90%. Now, when the pandemic hit, I would say that this definitely decreased. So I'm kind of talking about 2 years ago. Acceptance rates dropped a little bit. And I think the reason for that was because there was so much choice and you found a lot of people getting counter offers and things like that. And we were kind of having to navigate that like a lot of businesses were at that time, and hiring got a lot harder, benefits became more of a thing. And so we worked really hard on getting that acceptance rate back up to 90% and some months higher than that. We typically hire 70% direct, however we do see value in external agencies. And we've saved about 650,000 in the last 12 months. So, yeah, by having an internal team, we save a lot of money. You know, it makes a big difference to us. We're not having to rely on external agencies as much. And the value that we add to our business is extensive. Our CEO sees our team as vital to the success of our business. It's not an afterthought. That's why we've got a big team. They see it as business critical that we've got people that are looking for the very best people to work for our business so that we can scale and grow. Not used to these fonts. Marginal gains. The definition of marginal gains, the theory that small yet significant improvements can lead to monumental results. It's otherwise known as the 1% factor. I heard of the term marginal gains from my brother, who was a competitive runner, and he was talking about, oh God, I can't think of his name now, but Brailsford, the guy he manages the cycling team for Great Britain. And he talks about marginal gains a lot. But what do they mean in recruitment? Well, actually, we've got a couple of good examples. These are on my notes, I don't have anymore. But my colleague Emma was dealing with a client not that long ago where she was talking to him, and what was really important to him individually was that he wanted to provide for his family. So things like life insurance, private health care, all those things were really, really important to him. And she found that out, you know, on that first call. And when she went to make the job offer, she started off with all the things that he said was important to him, including the life, you know, the life cover. That was a really key thing to that person. It was more important than a bonus at the end of the year, having life cover. So that one thing that she kind of really focused in on made all the difference to him because she listened to what was important. Other things that we've been doing recently, we have loads of benefits. You know, like a lot of businesses have to have really good benefits packages, don't they? We offer benefits once a month where you can either kind of start late, finish early. You can get a Deliveroo voucher worth £10. You can get a Spotify voucher for £10. So when we've been in process with some candidates, what we've been doing is sending them a Deliveroo voucher. You know, like living our benefits through the process of the candidate onboarding system. Again, it's a small thing, but it's a little bit different to what other people are doing. It's a little bit memorable. It is a small thing, but in the grander scheme, it's quite significant, really. Right, it's like small stuff. I had loads of my notes. I'm gonna kind of move past that. I'm going to talk about it through the other things that I've kind of got on my notes here. The candidate journey, why is it important? Well, I think it's where it starts, and it leaves a lasting impression. I think people don't value what talent do as a team enough, because I think you mentioned it within the questions, but we are having to not just do recruitment these days. It's an awful lot more than that. And it's all about relationships. So it's where it starts, it leaves a lasting impression. And I think that changing jobs should be significant to anybody. You know, if you're kind of deciding to change your career, especially at this moment in time, there's so many things that you're taking on board and you're taking into consideration. something that we're definitely honing in on with our candidates is that financial stability. So as a business, we are financially very strong, and we see that that's quite an important part of decision making. So feeding all that back into the kind of calls that we're having. We've also got a new financial system that we're offering as a benefit called BIPIT. So things like that really make a big difference. It saves you money ultimately by making every opportunity count. If you get hold of a really good candidate, you don't want to have to repeat the process, right? You want to make sure that you get it right first time. The value add to the business, top talent, individual impact. I'll come on to that a little bit later, but it adds a lot of value to the business by having good people, and that is the thing that we keep coming back to, especially within our team, that if we hire the best people, we don't have to rehire those people as well. That's also a definite benefit, but they add a lot of benefit to the business by hiring in the top 10%, top 5% of the candidates that are out there, and not really compromising on what good looks like. Brand ambassadors and referrals. That is a statistic. Candidates who receive a good onboarding experience are 3 times more likely to recommend their new employers to others. We have had so many examples where people have actually referred whilst they're in the candidate process. So they're interviewing with us and they're having such a great time within that process that before they've even got offered a job, they've referred 2 or 3 more people to our business, especially if they're in a company that might be making redundancies. We do really well with that actually, but we definitely get referrals whilst they're in the candidate process. The candidate journey. It's all coming through. Right, so attraction. I'm not going to go too much into this because I think that obviously you covered this off within your talk, within branding, but just to kind of top line go through it. Attraction, job specs, work with the job boards and take their advice. That is a really good tip. Take their advice because they really know what's working rather than you. And hiring managers have really got a preconceived idea on what they want their job spec to look like. And finance, when they send through a job spec, it's huge. PR, I can just think of people off the top of my head that when they send these job specs through, they're so big. We have to literally cut it down. We don't even tell them anymore. You're smiling, do you have that too? Yeah, you just have to get rid of half of it. And you have to put the benefits at the top. But you have to work with what you've got, right? But at the end of the day, I think attracting candidates is very different to what a hiring manager thinks it should look like. You guys are doing the job, they're not. You're just making sure you're getting as many candidates through as you can. So job specs, work with the job boards, benefits lists at the top. Agencies. How do you work with your agencies? We don't work with loads of agencies, but the agencies that we do work with, we want to have really good relationships with. And interestingly, before the pandemic became a big thing, and before companies really needed loads of agencies, I've been there, I worked externally and I remember what it was like. And I used to take my agencies out for coffee every Friday and just do it in a little bit of a loop, or take them out for lunch, or treat them, because at the end of the day, they're an ambassador for your business. You need to have really good relationships with your agencies. Because the stronger that relationship, you're going to be the first person that they send a CV to. They're going to be the first person that they call when they've got a really good candidate. Those really strong relationships count for an awful lot. So I'd rather work with small amounts of agencies, but really good relationships. Brand experience, again, I'm not going to go into this too much because you did this already. Business pages on LinkedIn, video content. There's a lot that you can do with video content, and we've done a lot recently, and it's going down really, really well. So kind of show arounds of your offices and kind of getting that culture piece in. Glassdoor. Controversially, we don't do much with Glassdoor. We don't get involved in that conversation. There's probably more that we could do there, but so far we've kind of kept away from that. And headhunting. We do this a lot, don't we not? Yeah. Obviously, I said earlier the statistic, we hire 70% of our people direct, and most of that comes from headhunting, and it's not through direct applications. So we have to be really kind of on the ball and at the forefront and putting ourselves out there, and we have to go at this with a genuine interest and a tailored approach. because anything less than that just quite simply doesn't cut it and doesn't work. And we get a lot of feedback saying, thank you for your message, it was a really good message. So like 3 points of interest from their LinkedIn on the message that you reach out with really works well. And when I went through these slides earlier, Emma was really good to remind me that you need to play the long game. So, you know, we could have been talking to people for years before they join our business, but when they do join our business, have a couple of years of courting them on LinkedIn, it does feel like, it feels good, right? You know, if you hire somebody that you've been speaking to for a couple of years. But yeah, don't be afraid to play the long game. Okay. Engage and trust. And I think when I talked to Tom about doing this particular talk, this is huge for me because I think this is our point of difference. There's so many people out there that recruit people, right? And I think there's so many people who do it really badly because they don't engage and they don't get trust from the candidates. And I think that it's fundamentally, that's the whole thing with doing talent. You need to engage and you need to gain trust of your candidates. If you were a candidate, how would you like to be treated in the recruitment process? Well, personally, I'd like to feel special. So I kind of flip it on its head and I kind of look at that and I think of all the processes with the people that we've been dealing with over the years. And more recently, we've hired some really senior people into our business. Now, you know, they've sent me their wedding pictures, they've sent me their new baby photographs. You know, you have to get into those types of relationships with people to get that real engagement and trust. And by the time you come to the end when you're offering somebody a job, it should feel like a bit of a no-brainer, to me anyway. Listen. I think a lot of people don't listen. And I think, again, that's like a really key thing when you're dealing with candidates. You need to give them that airspace. You need to stop and not necessarily sell your job to them. You've got to listen to what they want to do. Because you can match up a job to the things that they want to do, but if you just go in and tell them everything that you need from them, they feel a bit bombarded, like that's not their job doing interviews, that's our job. So I think that a really key thing is to listen. Tell your process to the role. It sounds simple, but it's not. Like, we have commercial roles, we have tech roles, and if we treated everybody the same, it wouldn't work. You know, try and make that process bespoke to the candidate as much as you can. So if you're working with developers, think about what a developer wants from that process. I like chatting, they don't like chatting. So you have to tailor it to what works for them. And we've got quite a few personalities in our team, and I definitely feel like some people are much better at dealing with developers than I am, because they're calm, and I'm not calm. But yeah, I think you need to tailor your process to the role. Strive for excellence and sweat the small stuff. So again, I keep going back to this detail thing. You know, we write really big write-ups of our candidates and initial calls. There is never too many details for me, because all those details become something of a point of interest, something that you can use at the end of the process when you're offering a job. The small stuff really, really counts. Again, detail focus, similar to the above. Getting your hiring managers brought into the candidate journey. Now, I probably haven't mentioned that earlier in this talk, but stakeholder management is huge. I mean, we all know that, right? That is probably one of the hardest parts of our job, not just that we've got to find candidates that are not really out there for jobs that are impossible to hire for, but managing your hiring managers and taking them on that journey with you and getting them involved and getting them to understand the candidate journey is really vital. We've had loads of experience of this across our business, and you know, some of the times we've held their hand, we've gone on the interviews with them, and that's worked really, really well. But just getting them bought in and getting them to kind of not be as hung up on the job spec is probably one of the biggest things. I can see you all nodding. Yeah, so getting hung up on the job spec isn't going to get you the candidate. In fact, I don't like job specs. It's an unpopular opinion, but I don't like them because I think we ultimately know what that job needs. And a job, you could match a candidate who's got all the skills in the world to the job, but if they don't have the passion, the enthusiasm to do that job, you know, you can hire some of the skill, but if you don't have the attributes in the first place, you know, your hiring managers need to sell to these people as well, ultimately. And so you need to get them on board with the candidate journey. Don't rush. It kind of boils my blood when I hear of people getting offered the same day, because for me the candidate journey is important and they need time to think about it. So even from that first engagement, I always encourage anybody who's had a conversation with us to think about if it is right for them. Is this what you want to do? Have a think about it, come back to me. And if I think back to when I first started doing recruitment, I was so desperate to keep hold of them, right? So I'd be like, trying to manage their expectations, and I was trying to get them to do A, B and C. And now I'm just like, no, don't rush, because if it's right for them and you've sold it correctly, discussed it correctly, they should come back to you, but rushing is never going to get you the right result. It's never going to make that candidate feel like you've really listened to them, or that, it just never ends. It never ends well, I don't think. So don't rush. Every interaction is important, building trust and rapport. It goes back to the detail stuff, right? So I'm not going to kind of harp on with that, but overcoming the opposition. I think this is a really important thing. We have so many, and it kind of goes back to that 90% acceptance rate. I remember going to a talk in Manchester last year, it's at the IHR, and they were talking about acceptance rates, and some of them were like 30-40%. I was like, Jesus Christ, how is it so low? Why are you going through this process with all these candidates and you're offering them a job and they're not accepting it? Why? It seems crazy to me, but we went through a whole period where a lot of people were getting counter offers. I truly believe if you manage the candidate journey really, really well, you're going to see that you get a much better conversion rate. And we saw that ourselves, because during the pandemic and then kind of going into 2021, 2022, 2021, loads of people getting counter offered, and we got so much better at dealing with that. And asking them at the beginning of the process, what are you going to do if your current manager counter offers you? What are you going to do? So putting that into the process and really understanding that candidate and what's going through their head and what their thought process is around that is really powerful. So again, it comes back to that candidate journey. But if you build up trust and rapport with that candidate and you're having really honest conversations, you're gonna have a much better chance of overcoming the opposition. That's a really quick I did have some, what's the word? I had things that nicely moved into the next slide, but it's all gone. And then it goes on to employee engagement, and that is the next person's talk, isn't it? So I wanted to try, I feel like I've talked loads here, so apologies. There's so much more I could say on candidate journeys. There's technology that you can help you with it, so much you can talk about, but hope that's been useful, and this is just how we do it. But I'd like to think that you can probably hear in my voice, it's all about passion and doing the right thing by the candidate. If we get that right, this all becomes so much easier by just listening and understanding what people want and just giving them a really good candidate experience. And that's it. That's all. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
Go on.
So you mentioned at the beginning of your talk that the business is quite rigid when it comes to, I can't remember the word you used, but it's quite specific on a lot of stuff, what it looks for. Do you find that you've had battles with your hiring managers where you've been fighting for the great candidate experience, but the hiring managers are so process driven or anything like that, they've kind of, you've kind of had to overcome that, or they're quite bought in?
They're very bought in, and I think because I've been there forever, they kind of trust me to a certain degree. We've also had a lot of kind of managers that have been with us for quite a while, so by the time we started to scale up as a business, they did want that support, they did want that help, and they were understanding. And then we had a few hiring managers that came in from other places that did it their way, and then that's a bit of an education piece. So you do have to explore. I mean, that's when you get the really hefty job specs, right? They want every kind of development coding under the sun, which I don't understand. yeah, you have to kind of set their expectations, and you have to find, like you said, a middle ground that you can work towards. But we do default back to, let's hire the person who wants it a lot, and that we can train some of the skills. So we sometimes find that job specs want everything, but actually we can bring them back down a little bit, and we'll hire somebody that's maybe a slightly junior to what they want, with a view that will help them get there. So we tend to hire probably more that way when it's a really difficult role. But you know, you can have a role on for 6-9 months and you keep banging your head and like, this isn't going to work, and then they start to kind of come around to your way of thinking. Any other questions?
You mentioned about the candidate acceptance rate. So what would you say, I know obviously 100%
Would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that'd be lovely, wouldn't it? But
we nearly had it last month, but they went back to Japan. That's annoying.
Oh, it's a really,
so selfish.
I know, right? We had like 12 offers out, and one went back to Japan, didn't they now? That was a bit frustrating, yeah. But yeah.
What percentage do you think should we be aiming for? And obviously 100% is ideal.
I think it'd be lovely, wouldn't it, 100%? But then I think we learn from the failures. Like, I'm really big on learning from failure, because every time someone doesn't accept our role, we'll talk about it. Why didn't they accept our role? What was it that we did? Or what was it? Was it out of our control? And we have so many people, because it's a talent short market, right? A lot of people are moving for money. But actually, if you do the candidate experience right, sometimes they'll accept your role, even if you're not paying them as much as another business. We see that quite often as well. It's not massive amounts of money. It could be 2 or 3 grand difference, but there are always going to be candidates that go for a lot of money, and we see time and time again that they go for the money, and then like 3 or 4 months later they kind of come back to us and go, you know that job that we discussed, this one hasn't worked out, and can I come back to you? And I think actually I feel like we've done the candidate journey right, because they've come back to us because we've been such, you know, friendly, warm, approachable in that process, that they'll come back to us, but we kindly decline, don't we, Emma? Yeah. Yeah, I think 100% is unrealistic these days. We used to have it, I want to say, pre-pandemic, I think we were 95, 97%, we were really close to 100%. And I think that now, the way that we're working now, I don't think 100% is realistic. And actually, when you're hiring a little bit at scale and you're doing a lot of recruitment, I think it's okay as well, because those people that fall out at the end, it wasn't the right place for them either. Go on, Paige.
How do you make sure that an agency is giving the same candidate journey that you guys are internally? Because obviously, if you get an agency that messes up, it can have a negative impact on you guys, and obviously it can kind of discredit the hard work that you guys have put into Happiness Reputation. How do you monitor that? Like, is there anything you would do?
I think that any relationship that you have with an external supplier, it's not a straight line. And most of the agencies that we have worked with, they have fucked up. They've messed up at some point. And actually, by saying, okay, that didn't go that well, and we've all learned from it, and then we move on from it, that actually makes that relationship stronger. So we have had agencies where they failed things like finding out if they'd had the right to work, you know, right until the last minute, then we realised that we can't hire them, or they've got them in multiple processes, you know, and the agencies then, they've got themselves into a bit of a situation where they're working with 2 clients, as candidates at 2 clients, and they're trying to please everybody. At the end of the day, we're all humans, right? So I just think, working with agencies, I think to get it right, you need to invest time, and you need to invest that time up front. And so those agencies really need to understand you as a business, what motivates you, how you're going to go through your candidate experience, so that you've got a really good understanding of what our expectations are of the candidate, what our expectations of you are as an agency. But also just learn along the way and be in it with that external recruiter. And typically, we work with people rather than agencies, because we build a relationship with the person. and that person can really buy into our business and they understand us and they learn about us. And if they're inquisitive, if they're like-minded, then we're going to have a good relationship. But we don't need to work with lots of people, we just need to work with a smaller group of people really, really well. As soon as we start going out to loads of people, then it dilutes the message and then we start to have mistakes. Sometimes you have to do that to kind of keep your internal stakeholders happy, but it's never the way that we ideally want to work. Because some of our agencies we've worked with for 7-8 years and we wouldn't want it any other way really.
Yeah, makes sense.
Any other questions?
Just a quick one. So with the candidate journey, you've been in it for such a long time, either like pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, have you seen a particular focus area in the shift with the candidate experience, or maybe just anything in general from internal talent acquisition that you've needed to focus more on?
Yeah, they know what they want, right? So they've got so much more clued up on benefits and stuff. No, I mean, to be fair, I think it's great that people know what they want. And we're definitely in that period where it's candidate short, so they're kind of driving the market. So they're being demanding and they're keeping us on our toes. And yes, that makes it harder, but actually, it kind of makes it more enjoyable. No one works in talent for an easy ride. You know, you're in the wrong job because you're dealing with people, and I think that, yeah, they're going to challenge you, and I think that people challenging me or my team, it just helps us grow. So I'm kind of like, bring it on and let's learn how we get past that, just understanding them as individuals and what they want. But interestingly, I remember when I interviewed Matt, and he said, right, okay, tell me what is the best benefit that you have as a business? And my answer to him was, actually, what you should really do is listen to that person, find out what's important to them, and then you tailor the benefits to the person, right? They don't care about all your benefits. They probably only care about 3 or 4 specific ones that matter to them. So they kind of talk a good game and they ask a lot of questions and they're really, you know, they've got a long wish list. But actually, when you drill down to it, people are normally only motivated by really 3 or 4 things, 3 or 4 key things. So if you find out what those things are, then you're cutting out all the noise. But there's so much noise about benefits and what people want at the moment. In fact, today was really interesting because we contacted a candidate and he sent us to a page that listed out what he wanted from his next employer, which, yeah, and it started off by saying, these are the things that I want, and he listed off all the different development languages that he wanted to work in. I think he put salary expectations, benefits, all sorts of things. And at the bottom he said, you know, if you can match this, then let's talk. But if you can't, I'm not interested. You know, so
That's where we've got to.
That is where we've got to. That is where we've got to. And I think, yeah, I think it's finding individuals that are willing to go halfway as well with you, because it shouldn't just be all about benefits, right? They have to feel like this is a good place for them to work and that you've got the development opportunities and things like that. It's not just all about the benefits, but it feels a little bit like that sometimes, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Any more questions? No? Good. Well,